The argument started over something small. It always did in our house. I had come home from my part-time job that Friday evening, still in my work uniform, smelling like coffee and tired down to my bones. My mother, Pamela, was standing in the kitchen holding a letter. I recognized the envelope before she even turned around. It was from Westfield University. My acceptance letter response form, the one confirming my enrollment and tuition payment schedule. I had been waiting for that letter for 3 weeks. "We need to talk about this," she said. Her voice was flat. Not the proud kind of flat. The other kind. My sister Brianna was sitting at the dining table with her phone, not looking up. She was 18, 1 year younger than me, and she had a way of being present in a room without seeming to care about anything happening in it. "What about it?" I asked. My mother set the letter down and folded her hands on top of it. "The college fund," she said. "We had to use it." I stood still. "Use it for what?" I asked. She didn't answer. And in that pause, that short, terrible silence, I already knew something had broken. I just didn't know yet how far down the break went. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every word. My mother had explained it calmly, the way she explained most things she didn't want to be questioned on. She said there had been unexpected expenses. She said the family needed the money more than I needed to go to university right now. She said I could reapply next year, save up, figure it out. Brianna had walked past me on the way to her room and said without stopping, "You'll be fine. You're smart." Like that was supposed to be enough. My father, Curtis, had sat at the table the whole time, looking at his hands. He didn't say a word. Not one. He just sat there like a man who had already agreed to something and didn't have the courage to admit it. I lay there thinking about how long I had worked for that fund. How my grandmother Vivian had started it when I was 7 years old. How I had watched the statements come in the mail every birthday, every Christmas. How it had been mine in a way that nothing else in this house ever truly was. And now it was gone. Closed my eyes. But I didn't cry. I was too angry to cry. The next morning I went to the bank. I didn't tell anyone. I woke up before my parents, got dressed quietly, and took the bus to the branch on Clement Street. I had the account number, had my ID. I had every right to walk through that door and ask what had happened. The teller was a middle-aged woman with reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. She typed slowly, looked at her screen, then typed again. She turned the monitor slightly, as if checking something a second time. "There were a series of withdrawals," she said carefully. "I know," I said. "My mother told me the money was used for family expenses." The woman looked at me over her glasses. "Miss," she said, "this account required your signature for any withdrawal over $500. The documentation on file shows your signature on 3 separate authorization forms." I felt the air go thin. "I never signed anything," I said. She looked at the screen again. "The withdrawals total $41,000, she said quietly. "The last one was made 11 days ago." She slid a printed summary across the counter. Picked it up. My hands were not shaking yet. But something inside me went very, very still. I came home and said nothing. That was the hardest part. Walking through the front door, seeing my mother in the living room watching television, seeing Brianna eating cereal in the kitchen, and saying absolutely nothing. Just nodding. Just going to my room like a person who had not just been told that someone used a forged version of her signature to steal $41,000. I sat on the edge of my bed and read the bank summary 3 times. 3 withdrawals. The first was 14 months ago for $12,000. The second was 9 months ago for $15,000. The third was 11 days ago, the largest, $14,000. 14 months. They had been doing this for over a year. I thought about my mother's calm face when she told me. The way she said we had to use it like it was a normal sentence. Like I was supposed to nod and accept it and move forward. I thought about Brianna walking past me saying, "You'll be fine." And something in me shifted. Not into anger. I had already been angry. Shifted into something quieter, colder, more useful. I opened my laptop and started looking up financial lawyers. The argument happened 4 days later. I had been careful those 4 days. Polite. Present at dinner. Asking normal questions. Watching. I noticed things I hadn't paid attention to before. New throw pillows on the couch. A second television in Brianna's room. A receipt from a clothing store on the kitchen counter. $840. On Tuesday evening I made the mistake of asking, "Where did the money actually go, Mom?" Pamela put down her fork. "I told you. Family expenses. $41,000 worth of family expenses." Her eyes went hard. "You don't get to speak to me like that in my house." "It was my money," I said. "You are 19 years old," she said. "You live under this roof. There is no yours and mine in this family." I looked at my father. Curtis was cutting his food into small pieces and not looking up. "Dad," I said. He didn't answer. "Dad." Nothing. My mother stood up. Her voice rose. The words got sharper. I don't remember everything she said. I remember the feeling more than the words. The feeling of being told I was selfish, ungrateful, that I didn't understand how hard things were for this family. I remember standing up too. I remember the door. She slammed it so hard the frame rattled. I was on the porch. My jacket was inside. It was 47 degrees outside, and a thin drizzle had started coming down from a flat gray sky. I knocked. Then I knocked again. Then I heard the deadbolt slide. I stepped back and looked up at the house. The lights were on inside. I could see the blue flicker of the television through the curtain. Someone was moving around in the kitchen. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "Don't come back until you learn respect." I stood there for a moment. The rain was getting into my collar. Down the street a dog was barking at nothing. A neighbor's porch light clicked on, then off again. I thought about knocking louder. I thought about calling out for my father. I thought about a lot of things. Then I picked up the bag I had set down on the porch step. It was a small bag. Just some basics I had quietly packed that afternoon, almost like some part of me had known this was coming. I walked down the porch steps and turned left. I didn't look back. My friend Nadia let me sleep on her couch. She didn't ask too many questions that first night. She made tea, handed me a blanket, and sat with me while I stared at the wall. That was exactly what I needed. Not advice. Not sympathy in big dramatic doses. Just someone in the room. I told her the basic version of what had happened. The college fund. The forged signatures. The door. She was quiet for a long time. "What are you going to do?" she finally asked. "I don't know yet," I said. "But I'm not going back there to apologize. I didn't say you should. Everyone will think I should. Everyone doesn't know what happened," she said. I pulled the blanket tighter. The couch was narrow and one of the cushions had a spring that poked me every time I turned over. But I slept better that night than I had all week. There's something about leaving a house that has been hurting you that feels, underneath all the fear and grief, like relief. I woke up at 6 in the morning. It was still dark outside. I had already decided 2 things. I was not going home to apologize, and I was going to find a lawyer. By the next afternoon, the calls from extended family had started. My Aunt Doreen called 3 times. My mother's cousin Patricia called once. My father's brother, Uncle Bert, sent a text that said, "Zoe, your parents are worried. Call them." I read every message. I answered none of them. What I didn't know then was what story my parents were telling. I found out later, through Nadia, who heard it from someone 2 streets away from my parents, that my mother was telling people I had stormed out. That I was going through something. That it was a teenager phase even though I was 19. That I had chosen to leave. Not that I had been locked out in the rain at night. Not that a deadbolt had been slid into place from the inside. Not that I had been sending messages that were left unread. They were rewriting the story before I had a chance to tell mine. And the people who loved them were believing it because why wouldn't they? My parents were adults with a house and a steady income. I was a 19-year-old sleeping on a friend's couch. I looked very much like the problem. I kept my phone on silent and started reading everything I could find about financial fraud. I found Mr. Okafor through a free legal consultation service online. His office was small, one room on the third floor of a building that smelled like old carpet. Bookshelves were full and the desk was organized the way serious people organize things. He was quiet, with careful eyes and a way of listening that made every word feel like it mattered. I laid everything out. The college fund, the bank summary, the withdrawal amounts, the dates, the fact that my signature appeared on authorization forms I never signed. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet. He picked up the bank summary and read it slowly. Then he set it down. "Tell me about the account," he said. "Who opened it originally?" "My grandmother," I said. "Vivian Carr. She set it up when I was 7. And when she passed? 6 years ago. I was 13. He nodded once. "Who was listed as the account manager after that?" "My mother became the co-signer. But the account was in my name." He looked at the summary again. "The money wasn't just misused," he said. "The access to this account required your written authorization. If you didn't provide that, those signatures are fraudulent." He looked up at me. "This isn't just a family disagreement. This is illegal." I went back to Nadia's apartment and sat at her kitchen table for a long time. "This is illegal." I kept turning those words over in my mind. Part of me had known it from the moment the teller mentioned my signature. But hearing a lawyer say it out loud made it real in a different way. I thought about my mother. About the careful way she had explained it that Tuesday evening. About how steady her voice had been. She hadn't looked guilty. She had looked like a woman explaining a fact, something already decided, already beyond argument. And I thought about Brianna. At dinner that night, Brianna had glanced up once from her phone while my mother was talking. Just once. And in that look, that one quick look, I had seen something I hadn't understood at the time. She had looked away too fast. Not surprised. Not confused. Just quiet in the way a person is quiet when they already know what's being said. Nadia put a bowl of rice and chicken in front of me. "Eat," she said. "Eat." Then I called Mr. Okafor back and told him I wanted to move forward. Whatever that meant, whatever it cost, I wanted to know everything there was to know about those accounts. Mr. Okafor told me something at our second meeting that stopped me cold. "The college fund," he said, "was one of several financial instruments opened in your name." He slid 3 printed documents across the desk. I looked at them. One was the college fund account summary I already knew. The second was for something called an education support account, opened when I was 9, linked to a federal tax benefit program. The third was a trust-linked investment vehicle that I had never heard of in my life. "I didn't know these existed," I said. "That's not uncommon in cases like this," he said carefully. "What cases like this?" "Cases where a minor is used as a financial vehicle by adults with legal access to their identifying information." The words landed slowly. "My grandmother set these up." "It appears so. Your grandmother was thorough." He tapped the third document. "This one is the most significant. It's part of a larger trust structure. Your name isn't just listed as a beneficiary, Zoe." He paused. "Your name is listed as the controlling party." I stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, "that your grandmother built something. And she built it around you. We need to understand the full structure before we do anything else." I spent the next 2 weeks living carefully and quietly. Nadia's cousin had a room available, a small space above a laundromat 2 bus stops away. The rent was low enough that I could cover it with my part-time job. The walls were thin and you could hear the rumble of the machines below at odd hours. But it was mine. Had a key. I remember the first night I sat in that room alone, on the narrow bed, looking at the walls. No television. No family voices. Just the hum of the dryers below and traffic outside. I thought about crying. But what I actually felt was something closer to relief. A little stronger this time, a little more solid. I was scared. I had almost no money and no clear plan. But I was in a room that no one could lock me out of. I put my key on the small table beside the bed. Then I opened my notebook and started writing down everything I knew, in order with dates. The bank withdrawals. The authorization forms. The names on the accounts. Mr. Okafor had asked me to gather every document I could find. I was done waiting to be told what to think. My mother called on a Sunday morning, 3 weeks after the door. I was eating toast and reading over notes when my phone lit up with her name. I let it ring. Then I listened to the voicemail. Her voice was different, softer. The kind of soft that isn't quite warmth. More like a decision to sound a certain way. Zoe, sweetheart, I think we need to talk. Things got out of hand. I'm not sure why you're still staying away. We're your family. Whatever upset you, we can work through it together. Please just call me back. She said nothing about the money. She said nothing about the bank. She said nothing about the signatures. She called it something that had upset me. Like a disagreement about curfew. Like a misunderstanding about whose turn it was to do the dishes. Played the message twice. Then I forwarded it to Mr. Okafor with a note. She called. Mentioned nothing about the funds. He replied within the hour, good. Don't respond yet. I need a few more days. I put my phone face down on the table and finished my toast. I was learning that silence was not the same as defeat. Used the right way, it was a kind of armor. I've been reviewing the account records we subpoenaed from the bank, he said. There's something I need you to know. I sat down. The investment vehicle your grandmother created. The trust-linked account. Your name is listed as the primary legal controller. But there's more. He paused. The college fund and the education support account are both connected to the same trust structure. They were never meant to be standalone accounts. They were always part of one larger system. My grandmother built all of this. Yes. Yes. She anticipated a situation where the funds might need protection. She structured everything so that legal control would transfer to you automatically when you turned 19. I felt the room get very quiet. I turned 19 8 months ago, I said. Yes, said Mr. Okafor. So for the past 8 months. Those accounts have legally been yours to control, he said. Fully. Without requiring anyone else's authorization. I pressed my hand flat on the table. My mother didn't know that, I said. It wasn't a question. She may have known the accounts existed, he said. But it appears she did not understand the full structure your grandmother created. She believed she still had control. He paused. She didn't. The next thing Mr. Okafor did was file for a legal hold. He explained it plainly. A hold would freeze any further transactions on all accounts connected to the trust structure. No withdrawals. No transfers. No new authorizations. Not without my written consent, reviewed by his office. Is that possible without them knowing right away? Yes. The hold is filed through the courts, he said. The bank will be notified. Your family will find out when they try to access the accounts. And the money that's already gone. We are building a recovery claim. The forged signatures give us strong grounds. He tapped the folder. I've also been in contact with a forensic accountant. His name is Mr. Cole. I'd like him to review the full picture. He nodded. Do what you need to do, I said. That night I lay in my small room above the laundromat and stared at the ceiling. I thought about my mother's voicemail. Her soft voice. The nothing she had said about the money. Somewhere across the city, my family was going about their evening. Dinner. Television. Brianna on her phone. Curtis in his chair. They had no idea that a legal hold had just been placed on every account connected to my grandmother's trust. They would find out soon enough. I heard about it from Nadia. She texted me on a Thursday afternoon. Your sister's card got declined at the salon. She made a scene apparently. I read the message twice. How do you know? Type back. Fatima works there. He texted me. I sat with that for a moment. I hadn't expected it to happen that fast. Mr. Okafor had filed the hold on Monday. By Thursday, Brianna was standing at a salon counter with a declined card. Later that same evening my mother called again. This time the soft voice was gone. Zoe, I don't know what you've done, but you need to stop it right now. There are holds on accounts that have nothing to do with you. This is a family matter and you are making it into something it isn't. Call me back immediately. I listened to the voicemail standing by my window, watching a man walk his dog in the street below. Then I called Mr. Okafor and played it for him over the phone. She said accounts that have nothing to do with you, he said when it finished. Yes, I said. That, he said quietly, is a very interesting choice of words for accounts that are legally in your name. Mr. Cole, the forensic accountant, met me at Mr. Okafor's office on a gray Tuesday morning. He was a compact man with a precise way of talking, like every word had been chosen and the other sent away. He had been given access to the full bank record history and had spent 4 days going through it. He laid out 3 charts on the desk between us. The first showed the timeline of withdrawals from the college fund, 12 months of transactions going back further than I had known. Not just the 3 large ones. There were smaller ones too. 800 here, 1,200 there. A pattern of quiet, steady extraction. The second chart mapped the spending. Designer bags, spa treatments, car payment, a 2-week trip to a resort. The dates matched Brianna's social media posts almost exactly. The third chart was the one that made my throat tighten. This, Mr. Cole said, pointing to the third page, shows the education support account. It was also accessed on 4 separate occasions over the past 14 months. How much? Asked. Across all accounts, including the smaller withdrawals, the total is closer to $68,000, he said. The room was very quiet. I had thought it was $41,000. It was 68. My father called me for the first time. It was late on a Wednesday night. I almost didn't answer. But something about seeing Curtis's name, not my mother's, not a family member's, his, made me pick up. Zoe. His voice was flat. Tired. Dad. Long pause. I didn't know about all of it, he said. Waited. I knew she used the fund, he said. She told me it was for the mortgage. That we were 3 months behind and we'd pay it back before you needed it. She used $68,000, Dad. Another silence. 68, he repeated, like he was tasting something bitter. The college fund was part of a larger trust structure, I said. Grandma Vivian built it. It legally transferred to my control 8 months ago. Mom didn't have the right to access any of it. He was quiet for so long I checked that the call was still connected. What's going to happen? He finally asked. I don't know yet, I said. But it can't go back to the way it was. Zoe. I have to go, Dad. I hung up and sat in the dark for a while. I felt sad for him. Not enough to change anything. But I did feel sad. The pressure campaign started the following week. Aunt Doreen called 4 times in 2 days. Uncle Bert sent 3 texts. A woman named Claudette, who I knew only as my mother's friend from church, somehow got my number and left a voicemail saying that family forgiveness was a virtue and that I should think carefully before making permanent decisions. None of them knew the full story. My mother had told them a version. The version where I was stubborn, where I had overreacted, where the money situation was a small misunderstanding that had been blown out of proportion. I saved every voicemail. Mr. Okafor had asked me to keep records of all contact attempts. He said it was important to document the pressure being applied. Why? Asked. Because it shows a pattern, he said. A family that mobilizes to protect itself socially is a family that understands something is at risk. Thought about that. I didn't respond to any of the calls or texts. Not because I was being cruel. Because I had learned in the past few weeks that my silence was the only thing I was in full control of. And I was not going to give it up cheaply. I went to work. Came home. I studied my documents. Waited. My mother arrived at Mr. Okafor's office without an appointment on a Friday afternoon. I wasn't there. He called me afterward to describe what had happened. She had been polite at first. She had explained that there had been a family misunderstanding. That her daughter, meaning me, was young and emotional and had gotten involved with a lawyer who was making things worse. She had asked to speak to someone about releasing the holds on the accounts. Mr. Okafor had offered her a seat and a glass of water. Then he had explained, calmly and completely, that the accounts were legally under my control, that the holds were filed at my direction, that they would remain in place pending a full review of all transactions, that if she wished to dispute any part of this, she was welcome to retain her own legal representation. She had left without the water. He told me all of this in his usual quiet way, but I could hear something underneath it. Not quite satisfaction. More like the sound of a person watching the pieces of a plan fall into place. She'll come back with a lawyer, I said. Probably, he agreed. But it won't change the structure your grandmother built. It was designed to be difficult to challenge. Mr. Cole's final report arrived in a sealed folder. I sat in Mr. Okafor's office and read it while he waited. It was thorough. 22 pages of account histories, transaction logs, and signature comparisons. He had worked with a document specialist who confirmed what the bank teller had first suggested. The authorization signatures on the withdrawal forms were not mine. The pressure pattern was wrong. The letter spacing was wrong. 3 of the 4 forms had been signed by the same hand, and that hand, according to handwriting analysis, matched samples of my mother's writing taken from school forms and tax documents from the same period. I set the report down on my lap. Outside the window, the city was going about its afternoon. Cars, pigeons, a food truck with a line down the block. She signed my name, I said. Yes, said Mr. Okafor. 4 times. Yes. I thought about my grandmother Vivian. About sitting on her porch when I was small, watching her fill out forms at a folding table. She had always been careful with paper. She had always said that a document meant something. My grandmother would be furious, I said quietly. I imagined so, he said. She built a structure specifically to protect you. Someone took it apart piece by piece. The offer came on a Tuesday. A letter from a lawyer representing my mother and father. Formal, polite, careful. Proposed a settlement. They would repay $30,000 over 5 years. In exchange, I would agree to drop all claims, release the holds on the accounts, and sign a document stating that the matter had been resolved to all parties' satisfaction. $30,000. Over 5 years. $468,000 taken. And the part about signing a statement saying it had been resolved to all parties' satisfaction. I read the letter twice. Then I thought about my mother sitting in Mr. Okafor's office. Polite at first. Asking for the holds to be released. Leaving without the water. They still believed they could negotiate their way out of this. They still believed I would take a partial return and a piece of paper and call it done. I thought about what Mr. Okafor had said at our very first meeting. You don't just have a claim. You have leverage. I hadn't fully understood what that meant then. I understood it now. I called Mr. Okafor. Tell them no, I said. Are you sure? Yes, I said. Tell them no. And tell them we're ready to move forward. Mr. Okafor called me into his office on a Thursday morning with a different energy than usual. More settled. Like a man who had found the last piece of something. I want to show you something, he said. He opened a folder and laid out a single document. The paper had that soft quality that old paper gets. At the top, in a font I recognized from my grandmother's other documents, it read, The Vivian Carr Family Protection Trust. I leaned forward. Your grandmother created this trust 22 years ago, Mr. Okafor said. Before you were born. She amended it when you were 4, again when you were 7, which is when the college fund was created as a branch of it, and one final time 6 months before she passed. He pointed to a clause near the bottom. This amendment states that upon the primary beneficiary reaching the age of 19, full legal authority over all trust-connected instruments transfers to that beneficiary. It cannot be overridden, dissolved, or challenged by any co-signer, co-trustee, or family member. I sat back slowly. She did this on purpose, I said. Absolutely on purpose, he said. She knew something like this might happen. He looked at me carefully. She knew people, he said. And she loved you very much. The meeting with my parents happened on a Monday. They came with their own lawyer, a tired-looking man who kept checking his phone. My mother wore a blazer. My father wore his good shirt, the one he saved for church. I sat across from them. It was the first time I had seen them in 6 weeks. My mother looked at me and tried to read my face. Looking for the version of me she was used to, the one who got upset, who could be managed, who could be talked down. She didn't find it. Mr. Okafor presented the full picture. The trust structure. The legal transfer of authority at my 19th birthday. The forensic report. The handwriting analysis. The total amount taken. Their lawyer tried twice to reframe it as a family accounting disagreement. Both times, Mr. Okafor placed a specific document on the table that ended the reframing. At the end, the reality was simple. The trust was mine. The accounts were mine. The repayment was not optional. The forged signatures were documented record. My mother sat very still. My father looked at his hands. Neither said they were sorry. But I watched something leave their faces. The certainty. The assumption that this would resolve in their favor. It was gone. 6 months later I was registered at Westfield University for the spring semester. The repayment Mr. Okafor arranged was formal and documented. A full return of $68,000 through structured monthly payments, secured against the family property. The trust remained under my sole control. My sister Brianna called once, 2 months after the meeting. Quieter than I had ever known her. She said she hadn't known about the forged signatures. I believed her partly. But she had looked away that night at the dinner table because she had known enough. I didn't slam any doors on her. But I didn't open them wide either. My father and I spoke occasionally. Short conversations about small things. There was distance between us now. More honest than before, less comfortable but more real. I thought about my grandmother Vivian often. About how she sat at her porch table, being careful with paper. Building something solid in the quiet way that people build things meant to last. She built it for me. Round me. In case the people closest to me forgot I was a person, not a resource. They locked me out to break me. But the door they closed became the exit I needed. I didn't go back. Not because I couldn't. Because I didn't belong there anymore.